Can you imagine if your career had changed just because of that? Like if you had decided that was so crushing that you just took a nosedive and went into something else. Can you imagine how many people whose lives have been touched by your work? You know, we've shot weddings for, I don't know, we can't even count it right now off the top of the head, but all those people could have not benefited from, you know, your work, your creativity from one person's harsh comment. Welcome to CR Conversations, hosted by Ryan and Christina Palma of CR Photos.
We're professional photographers who survived the unpredictable and grueling path that took us from rudimentary dreamers to fully self-employed business owners. From sleepless nights of editing to daring leaps of faith when quitting 9-to-5 jobs, we kept pushing for the dream to become reality, and we did it together every step of the way.
Amazingly enough, our marriage also survived that journey.
In our 15 plus years in the industry, we've acquired a wealth of information that goes far beyond camera settings and marketing do's and don'ts.
We've also piled up countless stories, affectionately called Uncle Bob stories.
We'll be leaking those one episode at a time.
Don't worry, names and places have been changed to protect the guilty.
So welcome to CR Conversations. We hope you're ready to take a deep dive into life behind the lens and so much more. Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about some taboo things surrounding the wedding photography industry. Things that perhaps we did know before we started, but a lot more that we didn't know. So let's dive right in. This episode is entitled, What Nobody Tells You About Being a Wedding Photographer.
It's you and only you.
Is that number one?
That's number one.
All right. Tell us about it.
Take it away. You tell us about it.
Okay. That's very true. It is only you. The buck starts and ends with you. No one is coming, to give you a break when you're having an off day. There's no one, to cover you when you're sick. It's literally you. There's no one there to like bounce ideas off of. If you're in the middle of like a wedding shoot and you're like, my creative juices are just not flowing. You have to be on all the time. And because of that, it can really be really lonely.
Yeah, I was going to say my first summer of shooting weddings was an eye-opening experience.
Tell us about it.
So I got into it. When I did, immediately I realized right away that I was going to have to give up my other job. It wasn't a career job, but it was a job that was paying the bills. So I had to stop working on the 9-to-5, whatever I was doing at the time, and dive right into the wedding industry. And I was also doing the editing and stuff like that. So I was working home before it was cool, before it was normal. I was working at home.
All right.
Which everybody was like, oh, that's got to be so awesome. But here I was, young 20s, middle 20s, sorry. And I'm living with two buddies, and they are leaving each morning to go to their offices with their, coworkers and friends, and I'm stuck home alone.
I had to kill you as a Mr. Extrovert that you are.
Oh my gosh.
That's my dream. Your nightmare.
Yeah. When they would come home, I was like a puppy dog waiting at the door. Like, hey, how'd your day go? What'd you guys do?
Just like you are when you come to see me in my office during the day.
Yeah, pretty much. But it was lonely. It was, like you said, it was you and only you. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of us, that's going to be the experience. We have the benefit of the two of us being together. Right, so we can bounce ideas off of each other. If we are lonely, I'll let you come to my office.
We can visit with each other.
Yep. And then we can have lunch together.
And on top of being like lonely, I mean, you miss so much being a photographer because there is no backup. Like, I mean, what are the things that you missed out on, like starting early on? I know I could give a list of all things we list now, but what were some of the things you noticed right away? Like, oh, wow, like this is a lifestyle change.
Yeah. I was missing friends just doing stuff on the weekends. Mm-hmm. I missed even like some major milestone occasions, like other friends, weddings and stuff like that, where I was already shooting. Obviously, as in this industry, you are committing to something like usually a year in advance or something like that. So you've already got something set on the calendar. Yeah. They come up with, hey, we're going to do this for the weekend. We're going to this place. And it's like,
we've missed so much. I mean, graduation parties, dance recitals. I remember missing out on so many of like my siblings' things because all their big things are on weekends. And like you said, you shoot, you're booking at least a year out, and it's really unfortunate. And then that's only gotten harder as we have kids. Like
that's something you will not know until you have the kids. But I'd say the biggest thing is when you're committed to shooting pretty much every Saturday. Summer activities are just very difficult to commit to. So whether it's them being on a soccer team, them being part of some sort of club, there's so many things that happen on those weekends or weeknights. So we shoot on weeknights and weekends. We have unbelievable flexibility during the day.
Weekdays, yep.
But those prime times, we are committed to something. So it's either you really can't do it or you're just you're booked.
And in all like full disclosure, like we struggle with that even with our kids. So we have not been able to get our kids like committed in even like a sport or some sort of activity because it's every weeknight there's practices or all this stuff is on Saturday mornings and Saturday afternoons and we can't do that. So it's been very difficult. This is for sure something we had no idea about when we started this career. So, you know, again, it's you and only you and not just you suffer from that. Your kids can really suffer from it. Yeah.
Suffer. I mean, they live, I think, very fulfilled lives. However, but that is an area. And if you got, you know, friends and family that can support you in that will help. Yeah. That's something that if you think that you have that foundation already set, you can go into that with that knowledge. However, as a parent, you know, our kids did get to play in a soccer league this past fall.
But that's because grandparents brought them.
Yep. Yeah. We had people help them out and we got to go, I think 1.5 days to watch
something
them.
like that.
And you know, that really, you know, it hurts you. It definitely, you know, kind of breaks the heart a little bit. Yeah. Well, for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, to wrap this point up, you know, people often think, oh, you're a wedding photographer, you're a photographer. You shoot a couple nights here and there, and then you edit a little bit and you just Netflix and chill. But in all reality, nothing could be further from the truth, especially when you're first starting your business.
Yeah. Number 2, competition.
Competition.
Yeah. Competition is there. We just had a great discussion with somebody about competition. I love that. We were guest on somebody else's podcast and we talked about this. What did he say? Community.
You know, everyone's biggest thing they always say is, community over competition, but really, is it really? So we're
community within competition.
Yes, that was, which I thought was
awesome.
Great. But this is a major taboo topic. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So everybody wants to come across as we are all friends. We're all for each other, supporting each other. And we are. I'm not here to say we don't support everybody else. We, as we talked about again in this guest podcast appearance, we talked about like in the industry and on a wedding day, we are all working for bride and groom. So whether, you know, we were working with DJs and with videographers and coordinators and stuff, we are all working towards giving them the experience. Now we don't work alongside other photographers because we don't have that. And so in that regard, it's a little bit different because you want to see other people succeed, but you're also looking at like this person that is getting married. I'm in competition with the next local photographer to get their wedding and stuff. So you are encouraging and supporting others. You know, a simple, easy way is just being on their social media and stuff and supporting them. Yeah.
But the biggest thing is we're here to support each other, but we're not naive enough to think that we're only photographers on the block. Like we are all, especially in a small area, like we're all looking for business. So there is, I don't care if you say, oh, I support all this, every single photographer, I don't care what industry they're in, has looked at another photographer's photos and compared their work to them. So pretending that doesn't exist is not helpful. This is a really hard hurdle to jump when you're first starting out. I feel like especially nowadays, it's very different from when we first started. The industry is so saturated. Everybody has a camera now. And, you know, after buying a few presets, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, I'm a professional photographer. But if you're just starting out and you're feeling that, like, don't be discouraged by everything you're seeing online, the highlight reels, all of the content that is out there. Don't be discouraged by the feeling of like, wow, how can I even get my toe in this industry? How can I even stand out, let alone like just get some photos online that I'm proud of? The only person you should ever be comparing yourself to is yourself. And I know I was like, oh, easier said than done. I know that is easier said than done. We've all struggled with this, but that's the reality. Are you better than you were last year? Are you better than you were last week?
Do you look at your photos from a year ago and laugh?
Yeah. Like that's great. If you can look back and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But you're moving forward. That's all that you should really be focusing on. And we just want to provide you with a few tips on how to not feel the need to compete, but just practical things to fight off, not feeling like you're in competition or just kind of putting yourself in this, woe is me, I'm never going to make it sort of thing because everyone else is so much better than me. Yeah.
Social media is probably, as you said, like social media has changed the way that we are closely connected to everybody around us. Mm-hmm. So 15, 20 years ago, you may not have even realized there was this other photographer in the in the area. Perhaps the only thing you know about them is they got a website. You've seen a business card here or there, or you've heard somebody say, "Oh, this so-and-so did my wedding." But now it's like you can go online and you are seeing every single person that you're in competition with. Mm-hmm. And it's almost back to like the schoolyard days. And
it really is. And that can be really overwhelming. So to set some boundaries for yourself, how can we do that?
Well, first, I mean, as we said, we do support. Mm-hmm. The simple way is like liking somebody, but following them and genuinely following them. And the biggest way to, let other people know that you do support them is by referring them on days when you've been booked. And you have to refer somebody that you also trust and you're confident in, that you can give your stamp of approval.
Yeah. Cause that's a reflection on you, whoever you're referring. You don't want that to bite you in the butt, later on.
But when another company says, "Oh, how'd you hear about us?" And you say, "Well, this company
was booked so they told me about you." That's
obviously going to, have an impact on them, but it's a lot easier to admire people's work from afar, correct? Or people that you are not in competition with.
Yeah. I feel like know yourself. Like I've been through seasons of my life where complete, not even photography related, where I had to like kind of filter through my own social media and make sure what I wasn't seeing wasn't like triggering to me or just putting me in a bad place. And that can be true as a creator, whether it's video, photo, whatever it is. Sometimes you need to limit what you're intaking so that you are not putting yourself in a bad space. So for sure, like Ryan said, like all these things, be involved, like be supportive in that regard, but then like maybe take a step back. And for sure, one of the biggest things that I think is important is support local, but do not be directly influenced by local photographers. You shouldn't be going through your local photographers' social media platforms to get inspiration. You should be going on Pinterest or searching through other areas because that's not going to create original content for you. You're going to be, even if you're trying not to be influenced by them, you're likely shooting in the same locations. We all live in the same city. There's only so many wedding venues. You're treading dangerous territory if you're going to search your own local photographers for inspiration. I would strongly recommend you not do that. Be there to support them. But if you're really needing some inspiration, pop on Pinterest, search, other hashtags. There's tons of like apps to give you inspiration and stuff now. So
and then don't get too mad when you go to look at somebody from Arizona and you see their unbelievable sunsets and you're like, well, that's not fair.
Yeah, I know.
So be careful both directions.
Be realistic in what we're going to get here.
I love that Tim McGraw song. It's Humble and Kind. It talks about like staying humble, being kind, and the journey you're on. There's also a wonderful Bible verse, James 4:6, that says he gives more grace to the humble. God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. So like, that's something we live by. Yeah. We think, hey, if we're walking around with an arrogance. Yeah. So just like we try not to look at other people with jealousy, don't be walking around once you think you've arrived with a head of arrogance, because just stay humble, stay kind.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's a great way to combat the feeling of competition and, feeling threatened. Number 3. What is number 3 in our list of things that people don't tell you about being a wedding photographer?
Relevance.
Oh, what does that mean?
I cannot relate to this at all. I will deny it until I am no longer relevant.
Okay. Like unpack that a little bit for me. What do you mean by relevance?
Okay. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it definitely gets harder to photograph weddings as you age. So I started off at 25. I'm only a couple years past that now. And naturally I connected with 25-year-olds through 30-year-olds that are, getting married a lot easier back then than I do at, the age I am now. Everybody's going to start going through social media. Like, how old is this guy?
But you are an exception because nobody ever knows how old you are. And we're going to keep that a secret.
Yep. So like I said, it's not impossible, but your interest, everything just starts to change. Like my interests now are playing with my kids and stuff. My interest now is
not going out every night,
knocking off debt. Like I get excited about those things. It's not the same thing for, a 25-year-old. And so it gets more difficult, but your connections get a little bit more difficult
the older you get. And I have a great story for this. So in support of this, comes to mind years ago, probably at least 10, probably more like 13 years ago. We're photographing a wedding and couples like great. And this elderly gentleman, who I will say was for sure
Lord
past
help me
his
never to be there.
cutoff age, was a videographer for the day. And equally as old was his equipment. It was like, whoa, what is this dinosaur of a piece of equipment this guy is working with? And he was just really old. It was awkward. I even remember the groom saying a few things about how awkward it was and uncomfortable before the wedding. And it climaxed at the wedding when the videographer actually got yelled at in the middle of the wedding by the priest for being so, irreverent or whatever. He was
obnoxious.
He was so out of touch. And obviously that made the bride and groom really upset. And it was very awkward. I can't remember this 100%, but I want to say that the bride and groom did have him leave early because of just how he was. And it was just like, okay, that guy needed to retire 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We for sure do not want to be that guy.
But back to stay humble and kind, because inevitably all of us will be there at some point, but hopefully you've made a plan to transition into something else before it gets to be too late.
Yeah. The age between the client and the studio needs to be such that there's reliability, relatability, and comfort, and there's space for both the client and the photographer to be natural. Awkwardness, discomfort, forced behavior behind and in front of the lens, translates to photos. So
and we're all about natural photography, natural, like everybody being in their natural, unforced moods and emotions. So if you're forcing it, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
Besides that right there, 10-hour days of high energy, fast paced, nonstop, spur of the moment, creative demands. And don't forget all that gear you're hauling around.
It is tough.
It's physically
on the body.
tough.
Yeah,
it's grueling, I would say.
Yeah, we always talk about the first few weddings every year. We're like, oh gosh, we're not in wedding shape. Our core is not strong.
Yep.
Your body gets used to it again, but it takes a toll on your body for sure.
Yeah.
So we for sure don't want to become the Uncle Bobs we talk about. So
poor Uncle Bobs.
Remember, relevance is super important.
So after we had an experience with another relic, I should say.
That's a sweet word.
I won't even say what kind of vendor he was, because I don't want to give anything away. But we had an experience with another person recently that should have hung up the gloves a few years prior.
Yeah.
I'll say this on their behalf. They were genuine. They were very kind.
Yeah.
So it was like that worked well helped. In their favor. However, they were so out of place because they were so outdated. And I think everybody there knew it. So we're leaving the wedding, driving home that night, and we're talking about it because obviously we're feeling it all day. And I came up.
This is pretty incredible. This might need to be
I hope this is, put a patent on it. I might be the first one to quote this, but I'm sure we're going to Google it, and this has been said a million times. And I said this all spur of the moment. I was just like, everybody has an expiration date. If you stick around long enough, you start to stink. Yeah.
And you don't want to be that one who's that person that the other vendors are going home talking about. So know your shelf life, folks.
Shelf life. I like that.
All right. Number 4. Taking photos is really only about a quarter of the job.
1/4 of the job.
1/4. It's crazy. In reality, to have a successful photography business, you're going to spend about 70% of the time behind a screen of some sorts. And maybe, if you're lucky, 30% of the time behind the camera.
Yeah, I'd say 30 is extremely generous. There is so much more legwork that goes into this than actually shooting. It all starts and ends with shooting. If you don't shoot, you're not editing good photos. You're not going to build that reputation, but it's so small.
Yeah, it is so small that we're going to break it down for you and show you how it actually works. So break it down a little bit for me. How do we spend our time?
So it's administrative work that really, you love it, huh?
Oh, it's not my favorite.
Running the photography business is incredibly huge. It's surprisingly large how much time you spend actually running the business as opposed to actually shooting. So on average, you're spending at least 1 to 2 hours a day just in correspondence and emails. However you communicate with your clients, you're going to spend a good amount of time doing that. I would definitely suggest in figuring out ways that is most efficient for you so that you're not spending more than that, and kind of keep that to a specific time block the hours that you're going to spend in that area. The next, you're going to spend so much time just uploading cards.
Oh, yes.
Keeping track of cards. But finding cards that are not being, stored away until that it's safe. So uploading, calling through photos, you're going to go through. Is that good? Or delete.
Thousands of photos. That's so much time. And then obviously the editing.
Oh, at this point, you have probably looked at 100,000 photos.
Oh, way more than that. I have my catalog right now in Lightroom has 100,000 photos, and we're in the off season.
Yeah, it is. It is nuts. It is incredible.
I need to restart my catalog.
Yep.
But there's so much time, just doing that. And then you add like Zoom meetings, 2 to 4 hours a week, at least. Like we're constantly, you have to be there for people looking to work with you. So there's that you have to spend time doing.
Yeah, we're talking about Zoom meetings, and some people aren't even doing Zoom meetings. They're meeting in person.
Right. We did that for many years.
So if you're meeting in person, you're talking about your travel time, stuff like that. So there is a lot of stuff that goes into it besides actually shooting photos.
Yeah.
Taking photos is actually now become the easy part of the job, the fun part of the job.
Yeah.
It's always been fun, but it was very challenging in the early years as you develop and stuff, but it comes very natural now for us.
And it is the part you don't even have to think about, because that is the best part. It's all the other stuff that you're like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I mean,
if only that's what we did.
Yeah. If only it was just taking photos, it would be very easy.
Obviously from the outside world, everybody thinks that's it.
Yeah. But that's, like we said at the beginning of this point, it's about a quarter of the job. Realistically, we shoot like 2 weddings a weekend. That translates to a minimum of 16 hours of shooting. That's not including like your driving time, all that. But realistically, we're typically shooting the weddings for at least 20 hours and add at least another 4 hours with like travel and all that stuff. So, and then in addition to that, we do at least 2, if not 4 other sessions during the week. So what is that? 6 to 8 hours a week, shooting when you're not doing a wedding. And you're going to think, okay, that's like 18 to 24 hours. Like
that's half the work week. Come on.
The average person's work week. But, we are not working 40 hours a week. Think realistically more like 50 to 60 hours. And we're not even like adding things like all the things that we have to do now, posting to social media, making reels, recording behind the scenes video, editing that. Like there is so much more that goes into running all of this that literally, like we said, taking the photos, is the easiest. The best part of it is such a small percentage of actually having a photography business. So, that's the truth of the matter that maybe you've never considered. Maybe you're doing this and you're like, yes, this is for real. I get what these people are saying. So have a plan for it, recognize it, know that taking pictures, while it is really fun, does not.
Yeah. Could we actually do away with social media? Because that would actually probably cut at least 15 hours of the week.
Yeah. But then, in all reality, social media is where your clients are there. So it's like, it's love-hate relationship.
The truth is, if you took social media out, you'd have to go to some other form of advertisement. So
you're right.
That's
Yeah.
That's definitely not happening. It's wishful thinking.
It is, but it's okay. What do we have next?
We have number 5, if you're counting.
Number 5. What's number 5?
Number 5. The income isn't always consistent. And this is funny because this is something that as a child, you witnessed and you're like, never doing that.
Yes, truth be told, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs.
Not photographer entrepreneurs. Can you imagine your dad doing photos?
Oh, no. He did work for Kodak, but so did everyone in Rochester. But I remember being a kid and being like, I'm never going to be self-employed because, we watched my parents like struggle at certain times. And there are so many benefits to that. It developed so much character. And like me as a kid, I can go back and look at all different ways that I saw like God take care of my parents. And that was such a good example to me. But I was always like, I'm going to have a 9-to-5 job. I'm going to have a steady paycheck. And then that entrepreneur gene was passed on to me.
We didn't even see it coming. We were shooting weddings for somebody else. And then all of a sudden
I was like, Christina's we're not doing this for someone else. We're doing this on our own. And so the income is definitely not consistent.
Yep. A week to week, who knows what you're going to be doing. Like, we've gotten a $700 tip before. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like something you don't expect. And you're like, oh my, you're complaining over here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. 1 week we got that. many weeks you get
You get
nothing.
none.
And then, you know, so some weeks we pull in 2 or 3 weddings in a weekend and make, you know, a huge chunk of money.
Yep.
But then the following week you make 500 or you make none.
Nothing. Yeah. So it is if you are the type of person who is like, I need to have my ducks in a row, I need to get everything set, and that's how your brain works. This might be a struggle for you. Not to say that you can't push through that and get help with all these things, but there is this is how much money you're going to be getting this week or this month, or you have to be a planner. You have to prepare for the off season, during the in season. Like, you just need to be aware that there are ebbs and flows economically. I mean, you have pandemics.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I can't say that our industry is isolated in this. These ebbs and flows of the economy, like everybody is, you know, hurt and by it. But if you're not careful, and we saw it, it's sad. We saw a lot of it during the
COVID.
It saw plenty of businesses go under,
which is so sad, because how can you, especially if you're first starting out and that happened and you're like, I just started, maybe you took that leap in 2020, like, this is going to be my full time, I'm going to quit my job. And then all of your work just got canceled.
Let's face it, we're a luxury industry. People don't need us.
No,
they could
get married and not have pictures or videos or DJs. And a lot of people did. So yeah, you just really have to be intentional about it. So got to have a plan.
Yeah. Now we've come up with our own plan, but that's kind of trial and error. There are a lot of people that are very good at helping you with this sort of thing. They're very knowledgeable on, hey, these are the steps that it takes to get to making a good business plan for yourself, whether it's in the photography industry or others.
And we're not experts in that area. Yeah. We do what we do, but we're for sure not experts.
Bits and pieces, but yeah, you're not coming to us to figure that out, or at least we don't have all the answers or an efficient way to give you that.
Right.
We're here for the photos.
Yep.
There are some great podcasts out there. I think there's the Dave Ramsey podcast.
Yeah, the Gold Digger podcast by Jenna Kutcher. She's great, especially when you're like first starting up, giving you tips and tricks. And this is even more photography like related, so that one would be really great.
Yeah, the Fine Print
podcast is super good. The Rachel Cruz Shop podcast is another good one. And then lastly,
Everyday Millionaires.
Yeah, so there's some people you can check out to give you more information on building wealth and a business at the same time, who are much more knowledgeable than us.
But as we said, you got to come in with a plan, because it is not every 2 weeks you're getting a paycheck. Right. You might be looking at a harvest season of, bringing in a lot, and then a drought season. And you have to make sure you're not spending all that money in the harvest season.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay. Number 6. This is another really big one that I feel does not get the proper attention. Burnout. Burnout is a real thing in this industry. And you don't see it coming. Like, all of a sudden you're going to wake up one day and be like, oh my gosh, like
you see it coming, but you don't want to admit to it.
Yeah.
You're like, you feel it coming. You're like, I am drained. I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this, but you have commitments already to like weddings that you've already booked. You're like, no, this is what I want to do. This is what I love. But
it does. It's really, really tough. According to Dane Sanders, in his book, Fast Track Photographer, in the first year, 60% of photographers give up their business. Of that remaining 40%, another 25 will fail within the second year.
How much does that leave us?
The ones that left remaining are 15% who endured just to the third year. So like that is crazy.
Yeah, that's an enormous fall off rate. I mean, again, outside world looking in, they're like, that's just a cake business right there.
Yeah.
But if taking photos was all that was required to succeed in the industry, why is the rate of people falling off so high?
I mean, I think some of it is things that we're talking about right now. There's a lot of things people don't know that goes into being a wedding photographer. Is, again, I keep on saying this episode, especially nowadays, it's so different than when we first started.
Yeah. But you got to come into it kind of knowing the ups and downs. Like you can't just you go into it just oblivious and naive. Or you can kind of, because we were.
Yeah.
What you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. You learn on the way. So hopefully this is helpful to you, and you're not having to, dive deep just like we did.
Yeah. But if you're trying to be proactive, we've got a couple things that can help you.
Do not get so burnt out. So what's something somebody can do to avoid burnout?
I'm going to say this is something that we need to work on as our first. Always leaving space for creativity. A lot of times, you know, our family members will ask us, what are you doing for art? And you're just like, I'm still shooting photos, but I'm not doing the stuff that, you know, you loved printmaking. I used to, you know, paint a lot. I'd love to get back into that stuff, but perhaps you can't. Perhaps it's unrealistic at the time of life you're in, but you need to leave some gray space. You have to have days that you are just getting out in nature or whatever it is that recharges your batteries or relaxes your brain.
Yeah, space on the calendar to rest and space in your mind. I mean, I say that because that's me, because I can be sitting there on the couch, like, I'm not doing anything, but my mind is doing a lot.
Yeah. So guys, I'm working with Christina on shutting the brain down. It is extremely difficult for her. There's tough. There's something in the Bible called the Sabbath, and it's about taking an intentional day and relaxing. And it's, hey, you're not made like a machine. You're a human. You have emotions, you have feelings. So you need to take a day off.
But what if you are made like a machine?
Yeah. Oh my.
There's no off button. And a lot of people are gonna be like, yes. And I'm going to sit there on the couch and feel guilty, but you just have to combat it. You have to create the space or your work will suffer for it. If that helps you through, like if you know, hey, and if it doesn't just translate to work, like parenting, you know, being a husband or wife, we all need space to recharge and do all the things we need to. So like Ryan said, leaving space for creativity. And then another way to combat burnout is to learn to say no when you've reached your capacity.
Yeah, that's like just point B off of the first thing that we said, really.
Learn to say no to whatever it may be.
Use the resources available to you to streamline your workflow. So with modern technology that is out there, obviously it's been curated for our industries and the growing, social media platforms that are just the way everything is interconnected. So much has been made to streamline industries, certainly photography.
Don't be afraid of it. I'm not saying, hey, give all your stuff up to have, computers generate everything for you. Don't do that, because then you'll completely lose who you are. But there are some things that have really helped the industry, like use them. Don't be afraid of them. Try them out. If they work for you, great. If they don't, try something different, but don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, there was times when it was factories that were constantly making like new assembly lines that were speeding things up. It's kind of that same principle, assembly line in our workflow. Yeah.
Another thing that kind of piggyback off of that is time block your workflow and follow a schedule. That'll help you, again, create space in your mind, be efficient, and then know this is what I'm doing, this is what I have to accomplish. And that actually goes with our next point. What's somebody else they need to be doing?
Set an end time for work each day. And we kind of talked, when you talk about just having a day off, it's the same sort of thing. Like at the end of the day, you need to shut down. You cannot just go from your computer straight to your bed. Yeah. And then wake up and do the same thing. Some of us
might do that.
Yes, guys. Like I said, I am working with her.
I'm a work in progress.
The way we kind of handle it is we have 2 children that go off on those little cheese boxes. Well, big cheese boxes every day.
That's what we call the school buses, cheese boxes.
Here comes the yellow cheese box. So when they leave, it's right to work.
Yeah.
We're thinking about, hey, when they get home, what do they love most in the world?
Oh my gosh, riding bikes and jumping on the trampoline and being with mommy and daddy.
Yeah, mommy and daddy the most. And they just want our time, which God gave us that so that we would get away from just working all the time. We would, say, hey, they're right. We need to get down, play with them. But that's part of the way that we do it. We try to be finished with the work, or at least be able to take a significant break when they get home to spend time with them. So you need to set an end time for your day.
Another thing is get out of your workspace multiple times a day to rest and refresh your mind. And if you're a wedding editor, you're going to know your eyes need a break, get away from the screen, or you're going to have to re-edit all those photos tomorrow. I.e. don't take your meals at your desk. Like get up, move your legs, go touch grass.
It's called grounding. I try to get Christina to climb trees, but
that's not my thing. So what's the last thing they can do to, avoid burnout, boost their creativity?
Mix up the type of sessions you're doing. If you're doing the same things over and over again, which many of us will be in a certain niche of the industry. So you will be doing the same things. But again, if you can do something outside of just what you're doing for your work, for your pay, and do something different, something that inspires you, go back to your early, passions. Yeah. And that'll give you
some new
creativity.
juices, just see those creative things flowing, like Ryan said, even if it's not bringing in monetary gains, like it is profitable for your mind and your business.
If you're that type of person that needs to know that rest is profitable, doing something different is profitable, use that to tell yourself, this is good for me, because in the long run,
I feel like I'm being preached at right now. I feel like nowadays, a lot of new and young creators are not adequately prepared for the industry and the demands of it. In some ways, there's this false narrative, floating around, social media and the world, telling them that all they need is a camera and some YouTube. This is how-to videos and the latest, preset that they can find. And then also in their professionals. And if that was the case, every mom influencer on Instagram would be technically a professional photographer. There's just so much more.
Yeah. And it's really great. Like, it's almost like the rookies that are coming into any sort of different sport. Like they bring in all this extra flair, but there's so much that they don't know that the seasoned rookies have.
Right.
And so it's like, perhaps we don't scare them with everything.
Right. Yeah.
Because, sometimes you say what you don't know. Like, if I knew everything that I was going to have to do to get through this, yes, maybe I wouldn't take that leap. So they're coming in with a bit of naivety, and that's good.
Yeah,
in a way.
You need that fresh blood, and we're not here to scare all those people. If nothing more, just to consider things to work through, encourage you. If you're a seasoned photographer and you're listening to this and you're like, man, I really resonate with these. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling irrelevant. This is the conversations that we should be having. We're not trying to crush your dreams and rain on your creativity. We're just, like we said at the beginning of this podcast, our goal is to peel back the curtain and let you in on what really happens behind the lens.
Yeah, because at one point we were those new people.
We were
wide-eyed. And I remember seeing another photographer that was maybe 2 or 3 years down the road from me. And I was like, are you telling me I could live that kind of life by shooting? Literally, I said the same thing, 25 weddings a year. Mm-hmm. And I could do that. Little did I know.
If only
that's
it was
the thing.
Simple.
You don't know.
Until
and so
you know.
just dive right in.
Yep.
And then you're just like, whoa. I'm in the deep end, and I am barely keeping my head above the water.
Yeah. So hopefully this, is a little bit informative for you and encourages you, and then maybe kind of like, hey, I need to be shooken up a little bit and, implement some of these tips and tricks to your own business.
Yeah. All right. We're getting to the part of the episode that I don't know, it just kind of developed on its own, but it is the Remember When. All right. So once again, when we joke about this, the last 2 have all been about you.
Yeah, I know.
And
I thought this was going to be a roasting Ryan in other people's session. And now it's just, remember when Christina did that really dumb thing?
I think Christina, like all of you, are realizing that Ryan is actually the more perfect one in this. And there are not that many stories, even though everybody just looks at him like,
jokester.
Wow, he's a real
cute.
goof. But so you're going to share a little bit, and it relates a lot to what we're talking about today. Young photographer versus seasoned photographer. In our relationship, we also, we talk about community.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a little bit different than what we normally do. We're kind of roasting ourselves or somebody else. This is a little, it's not a funny, story. It's just a cautionary tale. Is that? Yeah, that might be a cautionary tale today. So, back in my early days when I was first starting out in shooting, and I have always loved editing. Still to this day, that is my favorite part of the process. I love, in my mind, when I'm shooting and I'm visioning the editing after. I don't know. I've just always been that way. So in the early days, there was an extensive amount of editing, over the top, crazy, airbrushed. We even had a filter called the Lord of the Rings. It gave this glow. There's filters. I should pull some stuff to put in this video here. But I loved it. And back then that's what was in, just all the whatever.
The amount
presets.
of time that you would spend on making somebody's eyes pop.
Oh,
when I say pop, you would saturate
the blues, and then you'd highlight the highlights, and you'd, burn and dodge. Oh my gosh, guys. If you want to learn how to use Photoshop in your programs, just start your wedding photography business in the, early 2010s, and you're a pro. I mean, that stuff was with me forever. But anyhow, there was another photographer in the area who inspired me greatly in their editing style.
That was too big of a transition. Guys, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've We've been saying, as we go through this podcast, we've been kind of laughing about the way we say.
I have a very Rochester voice and accent, and I talk very fast. And I've noticed that I say photographer terribly. I say photographer. Like F-U-R. It's terrible. So
yeah, guys, what do you think about that? Just leave a comment. Don't leave a comment. Please tell me that it drives you crazy, but please work on it because I don't want to feel bad about it. Okay. There was another photographer in the area who I was inspired. Sounds so weird when you say it like that. I know. Who I was inspired by. And I had done this whole shoot, like set everything up. I did the hair, makeup for it, like was extremely excited again, like I said, to get it on the computer and start editing. And I edited a bunch of photos, and I took the one I was most proud of. And this is back in the day when Facebook was in its infancy. It was very basic. You had people you were friends with. You only saw their stuff. There was no home feed. You had to go search out your friend. Was there even an algorithm back then?
No, thank the Lord. I wish we go back. But I posted it on this person's wall, and I had said, this is what I worked on, and I was so inspired by you, and I just wanted to show you, and blah, blah, blah. And this person responded by removing everything I had posted on her wall and private messaged me and gave me essentially a lecture on how I need not to be copying her and you need to develop your own style. And it was completely like crushing to me because I was so excited to show her, hey, like you've inspired me. I think your work is really great, especially your editing. This is something I did inspired by your work. And it was just this huge wet blanket to my creativity. It made me feel really stupid. It made me feel really dumb. It made me feel really inadequate. And as we grow and as we move forward in our, careers, it's really easy to forget where you started. And when you get to where you are, don't be threatened. Don't be...
It's back to stay humble and kind.
Yeah. Like there is a lot of young blood in the industry now who, they don't have the 16 plus years of experience that we do, but they're going to fill your spot one day. Like, again, you're going to grow old and you're going to not be relevant and they are going to take your place and you want them to do well. Don't crush somebody's dreams. Like recognize how impactful something you say or something you do.
Can you imagine if your career had changed just because of that? Like if you had decided that was so crushing that you just took a nosedive and went into something else. Can you imagine how many people whose lives have been touched by your work? Mm-hmm. We've shot weddings for, I don't know, we can't even count it right now off the top of the head, but all those people could have not benefited from, your work, your creativity from one person's harsh comment. So think about that as you may be in that stage of your career where you have been in this for a little bit and you've got this up and comer that's, reaching out to you for your approval, your advice. Mm-hmm. Be kind to them, be humble, be kind.
Yeah. And foster creativity in people. And you just never know, how something you say or do. I'm sure that she has no idea how that impacted me. I don't even think I responded. I was so embarrassed that she took all of that down and responded that way. And I was just like, wow. And I bet to this day she has no idea. And
that's all right. We're definitely not trying to.
But again, I'm sharing all of that so you don't end up being that person or I don't end up being that person. But to always be looking for ways to serve the community, be a part of it, and leave a path behind you that somebody actually wants to travel. Encourage those who come behind you and, don't dampen their flame just because you're not quite out of the industry yet.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Definitely just encourage others. There are a lot of photographers out there. There's a lot of people also that need photographers. So you're not going to be able to, serve everybody. Mm-hmm. So don't kill everybody else that is, trying to make a living, trying to make a business, up and coming. Encourage, foster, respect others. Your work will speak for itself and your kindness will go a long way. Remember what I said about that one vendor that was still hanging around longer than he should have?
Yeah.
We couldn't say more about his kindness though. He was a very kind, gentle man. Mm-hmm. And just because of that, you didn't want to dislike him. Right. You just were just like, He should wrap it up. All right. Speaking of wrapping it up, let's wrap this episode up.
All right. As we wrap things up, just remember, you should always be learning. As a photographer in general, wedding or whatever you're doing, you should never in your mind think, oh, I've arrived, because the industry changes so fast. You will need to adapt and change to it. What's happening today is not going to be the same as it will be in 3 years, and it wasn't the same 3 years ago.
That's a guarantee.
We are always changing. So don't think that there's nothing you can't learn. Don't think that there's, something that there's no possible way I could go further in this. The day that you think you've arrived, your expiration date is coming close because you're very quickly going to become irrelevant.
At the grocery store saying, we got to get this off the shelf.
Yes. And you don't want to be there. And just always, stay humble, stay kind, and be prepared and informed about all these things we talked with you today. There's a lot that goes into wedding photography, and not quite as easy as you think, but it is very rewarding, and it is worth it if you have the right information. And
now you know the rest of the story. What no one tells you about being a wedding photographer. Now we've told you, so go forth and conquer. We hope today's episode was insightful. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, as this helps others find us. If you have any questions or comments on topics you'd like to hear us unpack, please send those to podcast@crphotos.org. Lastly, don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We can be found at C_R_conversations, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a post.